So Denise Spaan is joining us. She is a Mexico-based National Geographic explorer, primatologist, and conservation researcher. Her research focuses on understanding how primates cope with natural and human-induced changes to their habitats. So she's particularly interested in how spider monkeys in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula are affected by the expanding tourism industry along the Caribbean coastline. So let's bring her in live with us right now. Hey, Denise,
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's so great to see you and so great to have you joining us this weekend.
Thank you. It's been an amazing weekend so far. I'm enjoying it very much, and I'm super glad to be here. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Of course. Amazing. Well, we are excited to add your story to the stories we've had shared thus far. So I'm going to let you take over for a little bit, and then we'll come back in for a little Q&A action.
Sounds great. So hi, everybody. My name is Denise Spaan. And there we go. I'm originally from the Netherlands. And if all goes well, you should be seeing my screen, right, Joe?
Looks good.
Good. So yes, I'm from the Netherlands, but I've been living and working in Mexico for the past 8 years. I have always grown up in very many different places. So my Dutch is actually pretty horrendous. I try my best, but I definitely am not as fluent as I'd like to be. But that has also introduced me to many beautiful places throughout my life, and has led me in many ways to where I am now. So I'm very thankful for those experiences. I am a first generation university student, so I'm the first one in my family to have gone to university and to have studied. I studied biology in Leeds in the United Kingdom. And then during that time, I realized that I had a particular interest in primates. And in that course, we didn't really learn particularly much about them, but there was something that captivated me. I wanted to know more about them. So I went on to do a master's degree in primate conservation. And that's where really this whole story starts, about this interest in spider monkeys and their conservation. Spider monkeys are these quite large monkeys that you can find throughout many parts of Latin America. So from Mexico all the way down to Bolivia, in every country in between, you'll find these large-bodied primates jumping through the canopy. They have these special tails that are full of muscles, so they can actually hold on to branches, tree trunks, or anything they need to, and they can completely hang from only their tail. So they can use their hands while eating and have their legs floating in the air. So essentially it works like a harness, like you would use if you're going on a zip line. So imagine having this amazing tail that you can hang on to things. What would you actually use it for? So spider monkeys, females, can actually use it to form bridges. So they do this so that if they have infants that are not necessarily attached to them anymore, so they're not recently born, they're a little bit bigger, but sometimes, the trees have gaps in them, and so they might not be able to jump so far. So the female will actually use her tail and her arms to create a bridge, which the little one can then climb over. Spider monkeys mostly eat fruits, but as you can see here, they can also eat flowers. And in eating these fruits, they play a really, really important role in the ecosystem. So yesterday we heard a lot about the role and the amazing role of arts in science. This is an illustration by one of my students, who in this illustration clearly demonstrate that when spider monkeys eat fruits, they defecate the seeds, which then pass through their whole digestive system. And because they pass through their digestive system, they're actually making these seeds be able to germinate better than if they had fallen directly off of the tree. And so in many ways, these primates, like many other species of primates, help the forest to regenerate. So they're constantly helping to plant essentially the forest. And that's why sometimes they've been called the gardeners of the tropical rainforest. So if we conserve spider monkeys and thereby conserve the forest that they live in, we're also automatically helping all the other species that they share homes with. Here we can see some of the species that you find in the Yucatan Peninsula, such as the coatis, raccoons, tapirs, and many other species of animals. So in trying to help and conserve spider monkey habitat, we're indirectly also helping many other species of animals and plants. So I had read all of these things during my master's, trying to find as much information as possible about spider monkeys. But really the real fascination, if I think back, comes from a single image. So this illustration, it's a scientific illustration by Stephen Nash, a very famous primate illustrator, is an illustration that appeared in a list that's called the 25 Most Endangered Species List, Primates in Peril, which is published every 2 years. And on this list, primatologists come together every 2 years and decide which species really need our attention at the moment. At the time of my master's, the brown-headed spider monkey was on that list, and I saw the image and I said, I need to know more about this species. I want to know what is going on with them. I want to know everything about them. There was just something that captured my attention. But it soon became clear that very, very little was known about them. I managed to get in touch with the researchers who were working with this species, and I got some funding to go out to Ecuador and spend 3 months studying this species in the wild. And it was my very first time to go and study any wild species of primate, and also to go to Latin America on my own and to explore the jungles of this amazing set of continents. And that leads to the next image. So this is where the fascination started, and this is where the reality started. So the brown-headed spider monkeys are limited to a very restricted parts of Ecuador. They're not on the Amazon side of Ecuador, but actually on the other side, nearer to the Pacific coastline. But to get to some of the forests where you find these beautiful primates, you have to traverse these muddy hills, which I fell over in many, many times. And here's where really the story starts for me many years ago. And most recently, in January, I managed to go back after many years and see how it all looked more recently. But once you go over those muddy hills, you're met by some of the most incredible tropical forests that you can imagine. These are cloud forests. And so the clouds can come really low at certain times of the day, and it just gives it this kind of mystical, almost eerie feeling when you're walking around there. There's water everywhere. So you're walking through rivers, there's waterfalls. I mean, it's something like from the movies. And at some points I really felt like, wow, where am I? This is just incredible. But to see the brown-headed spider monkeys was not always equally easy. And I think we could go days sometimes without seeing them. But when we caught a snapshot, and this is by far not the best photo, but this is how we often saw them because of all the clouds. There's a really strong contrast of the white sky with the dark color of these primates, which are in completely black, apart from a little bit of brown on the very tops of their heads. So this is a recent video that I took on our most recent trip to see these beautiful primates. And you can see here how they use that tail and have all the rest of their limbs free to move around. And in this case, kind of explore our presence. So what are we doing there? Why are we watching them? So in these 3 months, I learned an incredible amount, not only about the spider monkeys, but the threats they face. I had to learn Spanish, of course. I came knowing what I thought was something, and I quickly learned was basically nothing. And it really set into motion an absolute love for Latin America. It also introduced me to my first 2 female mentors and inspirations. Citlali Morelos Juarez is just an incredible scientist. She taught me everything I knew and know about fieldwork. Such a patient person, and I think it's one of the biggest important things in a mentor is to be patient. And I don't know how many times she showed me how to use the GPS or simple things in the field, but also shared with me her love, her passion, all her knowledge in the most open and transparent way, which as a young scientist is extremely inspiring to see this willingness to share knowledge and for it to be open and accessible to everyone. And my other big inspiration is Yadira. Yadira, at the time that I was there 9 years ago, was the woman of the house. She would cook for us during the day, and she was a cacao farmer. So she would be all day out in the cacao fields and prepare the meals while we were out in the field with the spider monkeys. Now, 9 years later, coming back, she leads all the operations of what has since been turned into a protected area. She is just the most incredible woman, super strong and knowledgeable and motivated, dedicated. And it really has been a massive inspiration for me to have worked with these women and have seen their journey over the past couple years, and thankfully been able to keep in touch and follow those journeys in a more personal way. This love for spider monkeys then led on to a PhD. I'm very lucky that Filippo Aureli, who is the professor pictured here with me in the field, that he took a chance on me. I wrote him as a young scientist looking for PhD positions, saying, well, I want to study aspects of spider monkey conservation and how habitat loss affects them. But his career up until that point had been on very different topics. And by luck, his response was, for the first time, I'm looking for a conservation student. And I think mentors come in many different forms. So I have had many female mentors, but I have also had male mentors. And he definitely has been one of them. So coming from these very wet, muddy forests, the Yucatan Peninsula is just about the complete opposite. So water in the Yucatan Peninsula is actually found under the ground, which is why you have these huge, huge fig trees that have all these roots sprouting out in the search of this water that's very deep underground. And therefore, you also have seasons of the year where it's very, very dry, and a lot of the leaves actually even fall off of the trees. So for me, it was like this is a completely new environment, a new experience. I mean, to see spider monkeys like this on trees with, no leaves, tiny buds where you can see them so easily, um, was very interesting, and it also led to many new questions about what can we understand about these species, what can we learn from them in this new and completely different environment. So my PhD focused on starting to answer questions that I have been working on for the couple years since then. Is how many monkeys are there, and where are they? And it soon became clear that, well, in general, we don't have much idea of these questions, but also, how do you actually answer them? No? How do you go about counting monkeys in a forest? How will I know how many there are? It's not as if I can go up to their house and ask and say, how many people live here? It doesn't work like that. And so what we had to do was we walked for hours and hours and hours through the forest in the hope of seeing these monkeys and catching enough glimpse of them for long enough to be able to see how many there are. Maybe are they males? Are they females? How big are they? So are they adults? Are they infants? And although that works to some extent, of course, imagine if you spend hours and hours walking through the forest, you're actually only going into really small parts of it because many areas are so large and so expansive, and we have no idea how many monkeys there are. So this led on to some more recent work that we started on the use of drone technology. And before I go more into that, I wanted to reflect upon this. So I shared some of the results of my research. I was invited to go to the National Geographic headquarters in Washington, D.C. And I mean, as a young scientist, you've read and seen National Geographic all your life. I mean, it's the place of inspiration, ideas, of crazy adventures that one can only dream of. So standing on that stage was a very, very impactful experience. For me, something I never thought could have happened ever. But it's also an environment where ideas are welcome, where crazy ideas are not crazy, they just are to be put to the test. Let's go for it. Let's see. And something that really resonated over the years since that experience is this: let's try it. Let's go for it. Why not? What do we have to lose? Let's see if somebody will support us. And thankfully, they did support us again in our research to try something crazy, something new, which was to use drones to try and find spider monkeys. So instead of walking through the forest and trying to see them from downwards up, could we actually see them from up looking down? And we decided to use a special kind of camera, which is called a thermal camera. It's essentially a camera that looks for heat. So it doesn't necessarily take a picture like the one on your phone, but actually it's looking for temperatures. And if the difference in temperature is large enough, the animal that you're looking for might be able to be observed. That was what, up until that point, the science was telling us. So we thought, well, let's see, could this be a way to find spider monkeys and find them quicker than we have been able to in the past? And we can see here that the forest, the tops of the trees are all outlined in purple, and that these three yellowy, orangey, bloody bits, they're actually spider monkeys that are sitting at the very, very tops of the trees, and they're appearing very easily. And so we were able to show that actually, yes, you can use this technology to not only figure out where spider monkeys are, but also start to get more ideas on counting them. So how many could there potentially be? Now, there's still, of course, a huge amount of forest left to cover, and a lot of work to be done, but it's really exciting to see that others are starting to adopt the same methods, the same technology, again, putting it to the test and asking, could this work for us? Can we do this too? Could it work for other species? And collectively, we're all trying to answer these same questions. How many of these monkeys are there? Which is one of the basal questions to be able to understand what can we do to help their conservation. Now, going through all this footage is a very, very time-consuming process. And so we're now recently working with an NGO called Conservation Artificial Intelligence, Conservation AI, and they're using machine learning and artificial intelligence to help us go through these images. And here we can see that this machine learning is actually helping us to detect, yes, this is probably a spider monkey to this degree of certainty. So for example, 53% means it could be a spider monkey, it could be something else, but at least there is definitely is different from other aspects of the forest canopy. But 95% obviously indicates that it's much, much more likely. So this is something we've been working on very, very recently, and are continuing to develop into the future. But really, none of any of our research would be possible without some absolutely amazing women. So these are the amazing women that have been involved in our field projects for the past couple of years, who day in, day out run after the monkeys in the field and write down what are they doing, where are they going, what are they eating. They have been the ones flying the drones, so some of these women are pilots. They've been involved in answering really critical research and conservation questions. And it's from them that I receive a lot of inspiration, because seeing other women day in, day out be passionate for what they're doing is always a huge driver. And being able to now be in the position to help them drive their careers forward is a beautiful experience for me, and a very humbling one as well. But it's not only people like me that can help spider monkeys conservation. Absolutely everybody can be involved, and I think that's a very, very important aspect. There are so many different ways you can be involved, from simply from your home sharing information about species that you find interesting. So that can be spider monkeys or many others, to when you're on holiday and you see these animals, being mindful of them. So keeping your distance when you watch them, take a photo from a distance, don't interact with them, definitely avoid feeding them. These are really important steps that we can all be actively participating in, to make sure that these beautiful species live on and contribute to the regenerations of their forests for many years to come. And I just want to finish by saying that being a field scientist, or any type of scientist as a woman, comes with very many challenges. And I think some of them are very unique to women. And it's really through empathy from both other female and male colleagues, students, people you work with, people you live with, that we can overcome these challenges together, and find new solutions to them. So, for example, on my very first field trip, as I mentioned, my friend and mentor, Tali, had to help me with quite an awkward situation. Thankfully, though, she didn't make it awkward at all. So I had only been in Ecuador for a couple days. And like I said, my Spanish was limited to hi, how are you, basically. And for the first time in my life, I had some itching in quite some uncomfortable places. And we had just met. I mean, we knew each other maybe a couple days at the very most. And I had to confess that I really needed to go to the pharmacy. And not only did I need to go to the pharmacy, I had to explain to her that what I needed and what problem I was facing, because I couldn't communicate the kind of help that I needed. Thankfully, she didn't make that situation awkward at all, and instead got me the medication. It was all fine. It was all resolved really quickly. But it's through being surrounded by people who help you and support you in times of awkwardness, in difficult times, that we can together overcome even like daily little challenges to really quite a lot bigger ones that that women face in scientific fields. And I think we can all help each other, and that's really for me a very important message, that empathy, I think, is the way to go forward.
All right. Well, Denise, thank you so much for sharing with us today and taking
no
us out into the jungles of Ecuador. It was a while ago when we connected last, and we shared some of your research with the spider monkeys. And I'm wondering, at that time, you were just starting to use the drone technology to look for those heat signatures from above, using AI to try and determine, how likely is that a spider monkey? Is it working? Are you starting to get a clearer picture of the population size?
We're still in the trying phase. So a clearer picture of population sizes, we haven't entirely gotten there yet. Because as the technology moves very quickly, things are also getting easier very quickly. But every time something new advances, we have to see if it will actually work for us. But we're slowly but surely moving in those directions. And what is really amazing is that others across the range of spider monkeys are adopting this methodology. So we're not only going to get clearer pictures from Mexico, but from many different regions where in some cases we have absolutely really no idea. There are no estimates at all. And so this technology is opening new doors for many conservation managers to start to look into this for the very first time, because other methods just were not working for them. So that's, I think, for now the really big advance. Is seeing how we can all come together, and a lot of that's overcoming these same obstacles together. It's has that happened to you guys? Have you encountered that problem? And then sharing those stories and trying to not all go through the same set of mistakes and hurdles along the way.
Collaboration is so important in science. It's so important in conservation. Sharing stories, sharing mistakes, sharing good practices. That's absolutely great. You mentioned, in your career when you went into conservation, you took some chances. You reached out to people. You kind of went after what you really wanted. So what advice would you give to a young conservationist, a young scientist who wants to get into field work, who wants to, you came from Europe into a new area. What advice would you give?
I would say reach out. There are a lot of researchers, a lot of organizations that need people, that need help, that may or may not be able to support you through accommodation or funding or salaries with that. But there's many opportunities besides the ones that are like advertised easily online. So if there's a particular area that you're interested in going to, or a species that you heard about, try and find some more information on them. Who is working on that? And then drop them an email. And I think the most important thing is be genuine. Tell them who you are. Where are you from? What do you want to do? Why do you want to go there? What is it that sparked your interest? What is it about maybe their research that attracted your attention? And sometimes that might lead to, thank you, but we're not looking for anybody right now, or we don't have space. Come back to us in a couple months. Or sometimes that might be, you know what, I don't have any space at the moment, but you could get in touch with. You come with all kinds of different responses, and at times there's a positive one in there as well. I would say also consider other options. Like look for places that might be a little bit not so well advertised, or that you find out kind of via. But there's many places to go and to learn. Obviously, speaking more languages is a huge plus. So if you want to go somewhere that does not speak your language, I would advise trying at least to learn their language, because it also opens up many more opportunities. Understanding and being able to talk with people, your whole experience and understanding of the place is enriched. And that is, of course, a very active process as well. It's and thankfully now with so many platforms online, that's all the time getting more and more accessible as well, as to be able to learn, practice, maybe talk to somebody on the other side of the world about what they're doing, where they're living, what is their life like in this other place.
All right. Well, Denise, I want to share your handles here, your Twitter and your Instagram, because of course, if anyone would like to follow along, learn more, these are two good places to start. And Denise, it's so great to reconnect. It's so great to hear that the work is continuing. To see, I don't think when we shared your story last that we talked much about the AI. So it was really neat to see the way that was.
This is just from maybe 2 months ago. This is really the newest thing that we've been working on. So that was not even in our minds a couple of years ago that would be possible. So yeah, things really do every time surprise you where they can go.
Awesome. Well, Denise, again, thank you so much for joining us this weekend. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and you can tune in tomorrow as well, because we have a jam-packed day coming up.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Denise.